make a quick video explaining what paper 2 is and how you should attack it. So we're going to describe it, talk about which question you should choose. That's kind of the strategy part. Then once you've made your choice, what you should do from there. So here we go. Quick description, paper 2 is 2 sections, A and B, and you have an hour and a half to complete both sections. So section A is international economics. You'll be given 2 choices, 2 questions to choose from, and each question has 4 parts that you need to do. Section B is about development economics, and that's the exact same. So essentially, you're going to do 2 questions, and you have 45 minutes to complete each question, parts A through D. When you begin the test, you'll be looking at something exactly like this. This is the standard level test from May 2015. And you see in this information here, and you can pause it and read it if you need to, basically they say the exact same thing I just told you. One thing I do want to highlight is here. The use of fully labeled diagrams is required whenever appropriate. Now, some of the questions you're going to be asked to go ahead and make a diagram. But even if it doesn't ask you to make a diagram, you ought to seriously consider doing so when it's going to help you with your explanation. You'll see once you open the booklet that you're going to have section A, and again, it reminds you to choose 1 question from the section. So question 1 is about this extract, and you see that there are parts A, B, C, and D for that question. Now, we're not going to choose this one today. We're going to choose question 2. And this one is about Brazil's currency, blah, blah, blah. And we see here again that there are parts A, B, C, and D. Now, this is where we're going to begin talking about strategy. Let's go ahead and look at the points that are available for each of the 4 parts. So for part A, we typically have two definitions. It will always be an AO1 command term. Define is an AO1 command term, but of course there are others. You should look at the command terms list. So part A is worth a total of 4 marks. Part B and C are the same task for the most part. They will always be an AO2 command term. So in this case, it is explain and explain again. And again, each of those is worth 4 marks. Now we'll come back to that in a minute. Part D is the only time that you have to do an AO3 command term, and in this case that's going to be evaluate, and you see it's worth 8 marks. So it's the most important part of the paper for most people. Okay, so what I mean by that, to understand, you need to look at these are the grade boundaries for the exact paper that you're looking at. Now remember, the maximum score for each question is 20, so you would have to double that to get to the maximum score here of 40. So for a single paper, you can see that if you get all 12 of the marks for parts A, B, and C, well, then that's going to come out to a total of 24, which for SL makes you a 6, and for HL puts you right on the border of a 5 and a 6. So for most people, it's a good strategy to go ahead and think about which questions A through C you can maximize, and that's going to be a good way to get a very nice score. However, if you are thinking about pushing for a 6 or a 7, well then it's really important that you do well on part D. The simple fact of the matter is you're going to miss points on parts A through C. It's not as if it's simple to get all 12 of those marks. But with a good effort on parts A through C, so maybe you get 9 or 10 of those marks, with an additional 6 or 7 marks from part D, now you're looking at somewhere in the 30 range, which is a 7 for both SL or HL. In table form, these are the amount of marks available for each part. And let's say that you're maybe not as strong a student and you're going to struggle to maximize your points in parts A, B, and C. Well, again, what that means is if you find the A, B, and C that you're best at, and you can get 9 marks out of those 3 parts, simply getting a 4 out of part D gets you to a 13, which again, for both SL and HL, 26 marks is a 6 and a 6. So you can see that if you think about this strategically, it's really not too hard. If you're somebody who's more confident in economics and you think, okay, I can get parts A, B, and C, and really only miss, maybe I make one mistake and lose 1 mark somewhere, it could be A or C as well. Well, again, all that means, or what that means is all you have to do on part D is get better than a 4. And obviously, the better you do on part D, or the better you can do on part D, the more, the more mistakes you can make up here. And for that as well, we see that getting to 30 points in each case is a 7. Now those grade boundaries aren't set in stone. They can move a little bit, but they don't move too much. A good idea on time is this right here. So you ought to try to do your definitions in about 5 minutes, complete both parts B and C in about 7 minutes each, which leaves you 25 minutes to write a nice, strong essay for part D. Okay, now we're looking at the mark scheme for that same question. So this is part A, and these are the definitions for exchange rate and current account deficit. So something like an exchange rate, again, the key is, and here's how you can miss points, is if you leave it with a not very exact definition. So if you say it's what money costs, well, no, it's what money costs in terms of another currency. But if you're spending your time learning your definitions using Anki or Quizlet or whatever, that really shouldn't be a problem. So that's how you can get your 4 marks out of that. The reason I will always encourage you to use the diagrams or to choose the questions B and C where it says using an exchange rate diagram or using a blank diagram is because essentially it's 2 marks for drawing the diagram correctly and 2 marks for the explanation. Now do keep in mind, so for this, let's go ahead and look at ADAS since you guys are more familiar with that right now. Using an ADAS diagram, explain how the move from a trade surplus to a trade deficit could harm the Brazilian economy. So it says here, for drawing a correctly labeled ADAS diagram with a shift of the AD curve to the left and a fall in real GDP. Well, why would that happen? For explaining that moving to a trade deficit will reduce aggregate demand in the economy because the net exports becomes negative, creating a decrease in real GDP. Let's break that down real quickly. So again, the 2 marks for the diagram, it's going to have to look like that. And really, you see here that it's not the Keynesian curve. There's no long-run aggregate supply. It's keeping it simple, and it's producing the result that the question asked for. What's going to happen to the Brazilian economy? So you want to show it as simply as possible. And then you have to explain why. So it's not just for stating this, and that's what's tricky about the mark scheme. It's not for stating that this is happening. It's for explaining why this is going to happen. So maybe you talk a little bit about the circular flow. Maybe you talk about the formula for aggregate demand and how if X minus M is a negative number, AD is going to decrease. So it's not as simple as just writing what's here, and that's why you should spend about 7 minutes, a couple minutes to draw the diagram, but really how long does it take you to draw this? And then, 4 or 5 good sentences explaining why this is occurring, not just stating that it's occurring. And then for part D, the most important thing for you to understand is that what's being measured here is your ability to analyze and to synthesize. So when your work is read, what's going to happen is that the examiner is going to say, okay, which of these descriptions fits the best? So you see that to get to level 3, which to get 6 or 8 marks, 6 to 8 marks requires you to get to level 3. But to get to level 2, which is 3 to 5 marks, requires a good deal less. So can you show clear knowledge and understanding? Do you understand what you're talking about? Now, a lot of this is understanding those kind of smaller, minute points that we make. It's not so much the upfront theoretical knowledge, it's understanding the context of the knowledge. So, can you do that? Can you analyze? Can you explain why something you're saying is true? And can you begin to make an argument about it? Now, again, it's worth pointing out that for level 2, you don't even have to try to synthesize and evaluate. Now, I'm not telling you not to do that. I think that's a mistake. But you can get a very solid level 2 score, like 5 marks, by simply showing your knowledge, knowing it well, and trying to explain why it's happening. Now, of course, you always want to also try to evaluate so that, possibly you can get higher up into level 3. A few things to keep in mind here, I'm going to scroll through that, is what it says at the end. Any reasonable evaluation that offers a considered and balanced review, that's going to be what they're looking for. Also keep in mind that you cannot go beyond level 2 if you do not make specific references to the extract that has been provided. Okay, finally, I don't want to imply that this is an easy paper. However, if you approach it strategically and think about which question you can choose to maximize how you do in parts A through C, I think you can see that it's very doable. You can easily push this from a 5 to a 6, and a 7 is certainly not beyond the abilities of most people. But to get to that 7, you're really going to have to spend time studying the parts of the syllabus that talk about evaluation so that you can bring out the specific knowledge that evaluation will require.